The important thing to realize about systems is how they are controlled. And we must get rid of any notion straight away that control is something imposed on the system from outside. It has to be built into it. Now, you saw me operate this governor just now and noticed how the engine slowed down. Let's see how the mechanism works. Suppose the engine is racing, then the governor flies open like that. You see it lifting here, transmitting the message along here, lifting that cam up here, and then shutting off a valve there. That is built into the system. It's called feedback, and feedback is ubiquitous.
This year, we celebrate 100 years since the birth of one of the most original and groundbreaking thinkers of the last century. Someone who defined a whole new field and found himself in one of the most pivotal events in history, the Chilean Revolution and the brief years of Salvador Allende's government, brilliantly captured by Patricio Guzmán at Primer Año film. We are, of course, talking about Stafford Beer, the father of management cybernetics and operations research. So what is his influence on progress studies? In his time, the term was not coined yet, of course, and I'm also not sure how he would even feel about the word progress. But his first principles understanding of systems becomes a key cornerstone in our toolbox to address the root obstacle of progress: the complexity of the systems we are part of, design and manage. On all accounts, he was committed to the betterment of our world. In one quote, the famous artist and activist Brian Eno describes him. He saw in cybernetics a resolution of his spiritual and scientific personalities, a way of turning science towards the liberation of humanity. In his many works, he recognized the growing challenges that complexity poses for us, whether in our governments, industries, or healthcare systems. One look at a drawing from his book, Designing Freedom, illustrates that. I came across Beer's work very early in my literature research and progress, several years ago. His involvement in Chile was mentioned in Utopia for Realists. This led me into a rabbit hole of research, starting from listening to Eden Medina's talk at the Tech Data Conference and reading her fascinating book, Cybernetic Revolutionaries. At that point, I commenced to devour his books, such as Brain of the Firm. They made a lasting impression on me with a multitude of drawings, diagrams, and even poetry, all tools for him to make us rethink how we deal with complex systems. If I could summarize all his thinking in a sentence, a blasphemous exercise of reductionism, I know, it would be in his own words: the purpose of a system is what it does, and not what it's intended to do. Beer was born in London on the 25th of September 1926 in an educated household, with his father being a chief statistician, an inspiration to what is to come later in his life. He had to drop out of UCL's philosophy department to serve in the British Army, before returning after the war to work in operations research. Eventually, he led a research group at United Steel and then established his own consulting practice called Sigma, where his first connections to South America began to take root. Eventually, Beer got a call from Chile from somebody named Fernando Flores, another fascinating person who went on to research symbolic AI with Terry Winograd in the US, and was persuaded to ditch everything for a grand new challenge: to implement his ideas on a countrywide scale. The task was to apply cybernetics and technology to help manage the economy in a project to be named CyberSyn. The infrastructure behind the project consisted of a network of telex machines spread throughout the country, all connected to the central government computer, recording and transmitting real-time information of factory production data. The central computer served as a dashboard and was modeling software detecting anomalies. Beer wanted a real-time information system designed to enable viable economic management through a foundation of cybernetic principles. The word viable is key here, since probably his most famous contribution was the creation of the Viable System Model, VSM, used to model any viable or autonomous system. This model can be used to diagnose the system and provide improvements to make it more capable of surviving in complex and changing environments. The completed project was designed with several modules in mind. First, Cybernet, the telex-based network for gathering and transmitting data from the factories to the central system. Then CyberStride, software to perform statistical analysis and provide early warnings. Checo, economic simulations, and most famously perhaps, the operations room. The latter was to be the central control center, a dashboard of sorts, where human managers could analyze the incoming data in real time, implement interventions and monitor alerts. Unfortunately, the project was cut short due to the coup d'etat in 1973, and Beer, together with many of his collaborators, had to leave the country to avoid repression. Beer continued to consult governments such as Uruguay, also Colombia. Other efforts were more challenging, often limited by local corruption or economic, political, and social instability. In the decades that followed, he published many more books, such as Platform for Change and The Heart of the Enterprise, and continued to lecture and teach worldwide. As Rob Passmore wrote in the obituary on Open Democracy, aptly titled The Man Who Could Have Run the World, Stafford Beer achieved the hardest of all pedagogic tasks. He changed the way people think. His protean influence stretches from generations of inspired students. A huge, life-affirming figure has passed, but his work will long survive. The century of complexity needs us to rethink our way of life, if we are to steer into a balanced version of progress, one of both abundance and justice. Beer's thinking will be there to guide us.
Then a system 3 and a system 4, and I got that far. And then I got to system 5, and I drew a big histrionic breath. And I said, I was going to say, this compañero presidente is you. Before I could say it, he suddenly smiled very broadly, and he said, system 5, at last, the people.